Georgia State Senator Brandon Beach of Alpharetta has held his seat of state power for 13 years. That's all over. President Donald J. Trump has appointed Beach the Treasurer of the United States. Now, the fight is on to see who replaces Beach in Senate District 21, which includes the Republican strongholds of North Fulton County and Cherokee County. Today, we will hear from one man who believes he can fill Senator Beach's legislative shoes better than all the rest. That man is Alpharetta City Councilman Brian Will. Will is not shy on social media and offers blunt commentary on the legislature's promises to eliminate state income tax. The TEDx speaker, two-time Wall Street Journal bestselling author, and serial entrepreneur believes his business management skills could do the state of Georgia a great deal of good. Mr. Will created an entrepreneurship podcast series through his company, Brian Will Media. In tandem with the podcasting, he also handles keynote speaking engagements throughout the year. At Editorial Interchange, we welcome opportunities for long-form interviews with all candidates running for elected office, providing voters with a better understanding of who is on the ballot. Join us for a discussion with Brian Will. Brian Will, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me on the editorialexchange.net broadcast. I'm having a good time today.
Well, good. Hey, one of our customary things that we always do on Editorial Interchange is we always do a local shout out to a local business. We're big on supporting our local economies. And do you have somebody in your area that's a locally owned business that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Gosh, I'd like to change it up a little bit. We have an innovation academy here in Alpharetta, Georgia, which has some of the smartest kids I have ever seen in my life at this school. So my shout out goes to Innovation Academy. Keep doing what you're doing.
All right. Well, if you're in the Alpharetta area and your kids are scientifically based or they want to do something special with their education, give it a look. And let's talk about some history on you. I've got to admit, you've got a colorful resume, Brian. A little bit of everything, fascinating. I was loving reading your websites and getting into some of that stuff. Where did you grow up, and can you kind of give us a summary too of how did you get to where you are now?
You know, Steve, my life is, as my daughter calls it, a series of chapters, and all these chapters kind of have a different thing going for them. But I grew up in a small town in Ohio. I was in an abusive home, got kicked out when I was graduated from high school. So I joined the Air Force when I was 17, went in the military as soon as I graduated, spent 4 years in the Air Force, 4 years in the Army, the last 3 down here at Dobbins Air Force Base, flying OV-1 Mohawks. Started my first business when I was 21. It was in landscaping. Built it up to 7 franchises. When I was 30, that entire business collapsed. I lost everything. My daughter needed open heart surgery. She was going blind in one eye. I lost my house, my cars. Complete disaster at 30 years old. But as I like to say, the secret to success in life is taking another step forward and just keep moving. So I started selling insurance, ended up building an online sales platform that didn't exist, sold it to a venture capital group, built a second company in the insurance industry, sold it to another venture capital group, built a third company, sold it to a private equity group. That put me into the consulting world. So I started doing operational and sales management consulting for privately owned up to Fortune 500 companies. Wrote 4 books. One is on overcoming childhood trauma. The other 3 are on business and negotiation. Got into the restaurant business. I've had 15 restaurants. I'm down to 2. Got into the real estate business. I own properties from here down to Tampa, Florida. Got into politics, ran for city council in Alpharetta, got elected. I've had a really good time on the city council down here. I've done a lot of good things. And now I do consulting for businesses in what I call the 2 to 50 million range on P&L analysis, profit and loss analysis, and sales management. And now I'm running for state senate. So everything I do in life is just another chapter, and this is the next chapter.
Well, boring is not a word I would use for your life. Based on what you said too, do you agree that the old adage that what doesn't kill you makes you a heck of a lot stronger? It seems like, with you talking about your childhood, the stuff that you had to endure with your first business, your daughter, does that give you the strength and the momentum to go ahead and succeed like you did in the rest of your life?
Steve, I teach this as part of what I do in consulting. And there's another old saying that failure leads to success. And I've always said that that's not true. It's learning from failure that leads to success. If you never learn, you're just going to continue failing at what you do over and over and over, right? I have had, I've been very lucky that I have learned from every single failure that's happened in my life. And I can tell you, looking back, I'm 60 years old this year. I can tell you that every single bad thing that happened to me in my life turned into something better every single time without fail. But that's because I learned from the failure and I was looking for the next opportunity. And when I saw it, I took it and I moved on. So yes, everything that happens to you is an opportunity to learn and grow.
You opened a door here. Can you give us some of those lessons that you learned?
Oh gosh, my first business failure. I had 7 franchises. We had 7 offices. We were doing millions and millions and millions of dollars. But I made 2 gigantic mistakes that I see business owners doing today all the time. 70% of my revenue was with one client, which means when that client fired me, and they did, I lost 70% of my revenue, but I still had all the overhead, the infrastructure, the employees, the cars, the offices, and we simply could not sustain. The second problem was that because I was young when I started, I never learned to put money aside to protect myself from problems that might happen. And so when that company fired us and we lost 70% of our revenue, I was in debt up to my eyeballs. I had no cash savings and the business collapsed around me. And I always tell people, you have no idea what can happen. Just look at 2020 when COVID hit. When COVID hit, all these business owners that were doing okay before, but hadn't protected themselves on the back end, just went out of business. And that's what happens if you don't protect yourself. So the first thing I teach entrepreneurs, protect your back end. Don't get too deep into one client. And those are 2 lessons that I have carried with me in every business I've had going forward. I've got more stories like that, but that was the 2 biggest ones right there.
Incredible. And you've also done some TED Talks. I guess, is this part of the subject matter that you do with your TED Talks? And I guess the books as well.
Yeah, the first TED Talk I did was called Your Past Is Not Your Future. And the last one I just did was called ADHD. Is it a disorder or a superpower? And I find that and I did these on college campuses, well, UNC, North Carolina, and University of Illinois, Chicago. I also did Cincinnati. But I find these kids that are, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 years old, they struggle with things that they think are going to hold them back in life that really could be positive, could be superpowers if they learn how to use it. And I use a lot of examples like Oprah Winfrey, who was pregnant at the age of 13. Nobody knows that. And yet she went on to be the richest woman in the world. Steve Jobs, his mother gave him up because she didn't want him. He got kicked out of the 3rd grade. I don't know how you get kicked out of the 3rd grade. He was such a bad student. But he did. Didn't know who his father was, and yet went on to change the world with Apple Computer. And I go over example after example after example in these talks about people who have struggled with the same things that these young adults struggle with, and they don't understand that you can turn those struggles into superpowers if you just learn how to do it. So that's been the gist of all my TED Talks, is working with these young adults and telling them that, just because you have dyslexia or you have child abuse or you have ADHD or you have whatever your problem is, there is a path to move forward. Tyler Perry tried to commit suicide 3 times, and yet he owns a movie studio, is one of the biggest producers out there, because he learned and he grew and he turned that into a fire, I call it, to drive yourself to do something bigger and better.
For those of us who watch TED Talks, tell us a little bit about giving a TED Talk. Is that kind of a nerve-wracking kind of thing? Because, you're being taped, obviously. You're in front of a live audience, right?
Yep.
How do you cope
And
with
you have
that?
to memorize it.
Yeah.
That's the worst part.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that as somebody with ADHD, and I have it really bad, having to memorize a 15-minute speech is difficult, because I'll sit here and start reciting my speech, and the next thing you know, I'm making toast and watching TV. So I literally, the way I do it is I record myself reading it. I put it in my headphones, and if you watch any of my social media, before I did the one in Chicago, I literally walked around every day for a couple of hours just listening to myself do it over and over and over. So even if my mind was wandering, which it does, it was drilling it into my brain. And even then, when you stand on stage and my heart's pounding, look, I've done training for 25 years and I've talked to hundreds, if not thousands of people. And I still get nervous when I'm walking up there, I get nervous. It's when I start talking that everything settles down and I get into the zone. I start, doing what I do. But, I get nervous doing it just like anybody else.
Yeah. Well, you are in your first term as an Alpharetta city councilman. Alpharetta's changed a whole lot in my lifetime. Used to be, when I was a boy growing up in DeKalb County, Alpharetta was considered way out there before there was a Georgia 400. That was almost a 2-day trip to go to Alpharetta at that point. But man, has it grown, and it's grown pretty well, I would say. Kind of give us the state of Alpharetta and maybe some highlights of your tenure on the council.
There are things about Alpharetta people don't know. We are the technology center of the South. People don't know that we have 700 technology companies headquartered in Alpharetta. People don't know that because we have the infrastructure, the pipeline, the power, we have 20% of the high-rise buildings in the metro area in Alpharetta. People don't know that 75% of every credit card transaction that processes in the world processes in Alpharetta. It's incredible. When I have a security council meeting tomorrow, and we'll have the FBI there, the GBI there, we'll have the state police there, the local municipalities, private security from all these technology companies, because security is huge because of the security infrastructure that you have to have. Can you imagine losing processing for 75% of the credit cards worldwide? Things would just blow up. So Alpharetta really is a very technology centric, powerful place to be. And this city council, when I've been on there and even before, the last two, have done a really, really good job of turning Alpharetta into the envy, really, of the entire Southeast. I mean, we've won awards for that. When I got on city council, though, and even today, we are still trying to bring Alpharetta up legally and politically in the way that infrastructure in the city runs from where we were 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we had 5,000 people. Today, we have 70,000 people. So we're having to rebuild our entire infrastructures to support what we've got. And one of the things I did when I ran for city council, when I came on, I had very clear objectives. The first one, and this is huge to me because what I do P&L analysis, financial analysis, is financial responsible management of the taxpayer dollars. And I don't have time to get into everything, but I will tell you that through transparency in finance and transparency in contracting, we've been able to save the city millions and millions of dollars over the last 3 years. Millions and millions of dollars. Plus, we've beefed up our police force and our fire department. We've added senior services. We've added more officers to the force. We've added force multipliers that make the city safer. We've done so many good things since I've been on council that I'm very, very proud of being here during the last 3 years with the city council, because we have an incredible city council, the members and our mayor that are on it. So we've done a really good job. And quite frankly, Steve, that's what I want to do, is take those same principles to the state of Georgia. Because if you think about the fact that Alpharetta has about $115 million base budget before T-Splits, a base budget, the state of Georgia spends every single day, 365 days a year, what Alpharetta spends in an entire year. Our entire annual budget is 1 day for the state. And if we can save millions of dollars through transparency in Alpharetta, we can save billions of dollars at the state if we can enact this DOGE caucus that I'm talking about doing, and getting the transparency in contracting and budgeting and finance and then voting records. There's so much we can do to make the city and the state better.
You're on the board of directors for the organization called Tech Alpharetta. What is that?
The Tech Alpharetta was originally envisioned by the previous mayor as being a technology incubator. In other words, and you see these in Silicon Valley, you see them in any high-tech centers. There's one in Peachtree Corners. We bring people in who want to launch technology companies. We either give them hot space desks where they can come in and be in the community, or they can get permanent offices. And we provide them services to help them build their business from the ground up, eventually to the point, where they can raise money and really launch and go forward and build something big. This is how they do it in Silicon Valley. We're just doing it on a small scale here in Alpharetta. I mean, you've got Atlanta Tech Village. So there's even bigger shops that do it out there, but we're kind of the first tier level of, hey, I've got $1,000 and an idea and a computer. I want to launch a company, and we've had some great success. Our previous graduates have raised over $240 million in venture capital in the past 8 or 9 years. So it's really a pretty cool thing.
Where's most of your venture capital coming? Is it coming from out west, or is it coming from the East Coast?
Oh, it depends on the company. I mean, every company is going to have a area of people that are focused on whatever it is they do. If it's cybersecurity, we've got someone who's working on sportswear kind of stuff that fits in clothing. We've got people. So it really depends on what the company is, and whatever that company does, there's always a pocket of investors someplace that are interested in that kind of thing. So I would say it's all over the place.
I know we get a lot of that fintech money off the East Coast in Alpharetta and Atlanta, and Georgia Tech is a big player in that area too. Do you all have a relationship with Georgia Tech at all in terms of attracting quality employees and business opportunities at all?
Not as much. I mean, obviously we have, we'll call it somewhat of a connection relationship with them. I think that we go to the same meetings, we do the things with them, but they're like the next level. If you look at us, we're small. Then if you graduate from us, you might go to the next level where they're raising big money. And then, you go to the next level where you get into either big venture capital or private equity. So not a direct tie, but we do obviously play in the same sandbox.
I would be remiss. I'm going to ask you a personal question. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this after all the stuff that you've laid on the table about your history. Uh,
Yeah.
what is your proudest moment in your life? I mean, you've done so many different things, so much varied things. That what's the proudest moment of your life that you can recall?
The proudest things in my life, without a question of a doubt, are my children. I have raised amazing children. They've both got graduate degrees. My son graduated last weekend with his master's in divinity. He's going on to be a hospice pastor inside of a hospital. My daughter-in-law is a family therapist. My daughter is a regional director of development. She's dedicated her life to nonprofit. She raises millions of dollars for the Salvation Army. My son-in-law is an Army officer and a police officer. My children are without even a question, the proudest thing I've ever done in my legacy in life, and the thing that I will smile when I leave this life, then it'll be thinking about my children.
Well, and I think that goes for a lot of people. I just interviewed somebody the other day, and the experience that she had with her father was just exceptional, and it really just changed her entire life. When you can have those quality moments with the parent and child relationship, it's so meaningful.
Yeah.
Wanted to ask you too. There's a group called DOGE Georgia. They are really high on you. They call you kind of like a DOGE activist.
Yes.
Do they have a platform that you have attached yourself to? Or if not, what is your platform for that DOGE going into the legislature?
So Doge Georgia is Brant. Brant is a good guy. I literally just met him not too long ago because he had reposted one of my things on X and it got like 35,000 views. It blew up. And that's when somebody introduced me to Brant. So he was kind of the original Doge Georgia Doge guy. And I joke, I say we were Doge in Alpharetta before Doge was Doge. We were cutting costs because that's what I do. I'm financially responsible. Financial financial responsible management of taxpayer dollars was what I ran on the city council. So when I'm running for the state senate right now, we're kind of honing in using the Doge platform, but really what we want to talk about is transparency. And it's transparency in the budget process. It's transparency in contracting. So I'd say transparency in budget. Where's the money going? Transparency in contracting. Who's getting it? How much are they getting? And what are they getting it for? And then transparency in voting records. So there used to be an opportunity for you to go to your representative's website and look at how they voted on their bills. And now you can't do that. You literally have to go to all the bills. There are 1,800 bills that passed in the last session. You'd have to go to all 1,800 and then find your representative and see how they voted. That's crazy. Why don't we have easy access to voting records? So all three of those things are wrapped up in this Doge platform. Transparency in budgeting, transparency in contracting, and transparency in voting. And then the second issue we've got is this illegal immigration issue, right? It's a hot topic. But illegal immigration really gets back down to Doge as well. If you start looking at the money, the hundreds of millions of dollars that we're pumping into the illegal alien community through Medicaid, emergency Medicaid, through housing and SNAP and all kinds of stuff, the birthright citizenship, which opens up all kinds of dollars to them, the $1 billion we spend on education benefits, that's all about Doge, right? It's still all about the transparency of where the money goes. And then the final one is really election integrity. And I've told the story that I was a victim of election integrity fraud. Somebody took a mail-in ballot, requested it in my name, filled it out, and sent it in. So when I went in to vote, my vote didn't count, right? So election integrity is a huge one for me. There are things that I believe we need to do. It is a hot topic right now. And so, there are things we can do to fix that process. We've just got to do it correctly without being crazy, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And, one of the most troubling issues with the legislature is you can turn out some beautiful bills with some wonderful language in committee, bring it out of committee, get it through one of the houses, get it to the other one, and then on the last day, at the last hour, they change the language without anybody knowing about it, with very little warning, and then they pass it, and you've got something completely different to your
That's called
transparency
lack
issue.
of transparency. Yes, that's exactly what it is. There are ways, and look, politicians at the federal level, the state level, they've been doing this kind of stuff since day one. They know how to play the game. They know how to get things done without actually telling people what they're doing. We need better transparency. That's what we need.
Right. And you're certainly not shy about putting your opinions out there. I like that. I watched some of your posts on Facebook and various other things, and we've got a clip I want to play and then get some comments from you.
If someone's telling you they can eliminate the income tax, I have to ask, where are they going to come up with $15.6 billion that we need to keep the state running? The money has to come from somewhere. 40% of our state will not just disappear. This no income tax pledge is a farce. It's nothing more than politicians telling you what they think you want to hear. And here's the worst part. Either they have hired a political consultant who is just pushing this message on their behalf that they know isn't true because they believe you're not smart enough to figure it out. Or the politicians themselves don't understand how running a state works or how building and managing budgets work. In either of those cases, can you really trust them to be in charge of your money and your tax dollars if what they're telling you is impossible?
All right. So you laid down the gauntlet. You put it out there. So you're saying essentially anybody in the legislature who's saying we're going to eliminate the income tax just isn't telling the truth.
That comment is aimed at my opponents in this race because they're putting out medias and flyers and mailouts and whatnot saying, I will eliminate the income tax. Or my favorite is, I will introduce a bill to eliminate the income tax. And that's just that it shows either a lack of understanding on how politics works and budgets work, or they're literally just telling you something to try to deceive you into believing that they can do it to get your vote, right? And I want to give you an example, Steve. So this is the example I will use of how this works. So somebody sent me a clip after they put that up, and they said, look, the state of Mississippi, here's the governor, and he's signing a bill, and he's saying the hardworking citizens of Mississippi will no longer pay income tax on their wages. Have you ever seen that clip?
I have not.
Okay, so that clip is out there, and somebody sent it to me. And they challenged me. Well, we can do this if they can. So I went and looked at it. And what it really said was, starting in 2027, they were going to lower the income tax rate from 4%, 0.25% a year for 4 years. So by 2030, they would get it to 3%. And then after that, if we hit economic triggers and if our expenses came a certain percentage below our revenue, we would continue to lower at 0.2% a year. And if all those triggers happened in 14 years, we could eliminate the income tax. Now, that's a realistic plan, and that's exactly the plan that I have put forward for the state of Georgia. But people are out there selling this notion that I'm just going to introduce a bill and we're going to get rid of it next year. And that's not the way it works. That's not how budgets work. It's not how money works. It's not how, look, it's $15.6 billion. It's 40% of our revenue in the state of Georgia. You're not going to go in and eliminate 40% of our revenue unless you're willing to shut down 40% of our prisons and let 40% of the prisoners go, and shut down 40% of our Medicare payments, and lay off 40% of our teachers, and shut down 40% of our schools, and shut down 40% of our road work. It's not feasible. So you can say, I want to eliminate taxes over a period of time, and I have a plan, which I've done, but you can't just say I'm going to cut it. So when I say I have a plan, everybody else is saying, oh, I'm just going to cut the income taxes. Well, it's not realistic. That's not the way things work. So you have to be careful what you say, and not just try to, I call it elicit emotional responses out of people on things that you can't actually really do. We can do it over time. Governor Kemp has brought it from 5.75 down to 4.99, or 5.19, with a plan to get it to 4.99. But I can tell you how to get to 3.5 in the next 2 years. And I put that out on video. And then from there, we hit economic triggers, revenue, expenses. We get DOGE in there. We cut the things. And then we can get it all the way down to zero. That's a real plan. That's substance. It's got meat on the bone. That's something we can sink our teeth into. You can't fall for these political bullet points of, I'm just going to eliminate taxes. It just shows a lack of understanding is what it does.
And so, and correct me if I'm wrong, you do think there is a way to get to what we see in Texas or Tennessee and Florida where they
Mhm.
don't pay income tax.
Yes.
It's just going to take a graduated process to get there.
Yeah. So, for instance, Texas has an 8% base tax rate. Ours is 5. Ours is 4, right, on sales tax. I ran the numbers. If you want to eliminate the income tax and replace it with a use tax, one of the other candidates has said that, we have to raise our sales tax to 14% state and local. Do you really want to pay 14% sales tax versus what we're paying now? Because what happens when you raise sales tax to 14% is people buy less. So when they buy less, we collect less taxes. And you create this death spiral. The example I would use is a restaurant I am. If a hamburger is $10 and 10 people a week come in, and I raise my hamburger to $15, you'd think I'd make $5 more a hamburger, but only 5 people are going to come in. So I'm not going to make more money by raising my price. It works the same way when you raise taxes. You raise sales tax from 5 or 6 or to 7% to 14%, people will buy less stuff. And therefore you'll collect less tax and the death spiral starts. So yes, there are ways to do it, but you can't just eliminate it day one. It's going to be a process.
And there's an argument too about it possibly hurting the people on the lower end of the economic scale because it's a regressive situation where they're having to buy groceries no matter what, and they're having to buy goods. So, are they going to pay more in sales tax than they would have in income tax?
Well, we don't have a tax on groceries, so that's a positive. But yes, they will pay more on every single thing they buy will cost them more. And yes, that will hurt the working poor worse than everybody else.
Yeah.
So a usage tax isn't the answer.
Right. Do the states that have no income tax, do they tax groceries? I would imagine they do. I don't know.
Like Tennessee, I think it was Tennessee I looked at, and yes, they have a tax on groceries. They have 50% higher sales tax, and they have a tax on groceries. So yes, if I can divulge into or delve into this a little deeper, Steve, one of the things I talk about is in 2021, that was 4 years ago, the state of Georgia collected $26 billion in revenue, and we spent 22. We had a $4 billion surplus, 26, 22. 4 years later, we're collecting $36 billion and spending 35. So we're collecting $10 billion more, but spending $13 billion more. Where are we spending $13 billion a year this year that we weren't spending in 2021? Where is that money going? And do we really need a 40% increase in our expenditures? You can't tell me that we can't go in there and cut several $1 billion of expenditures out of that money. Even with a $2 billion surplus, we can find the money to cut our income tax to 3.5 like that. But you have to have House members and Senate members who are willing to step up to the plate and do this. And that's why one of the things I've said is we need a DOGE caucus, not a DOGE senator. I call myself the DOGE guy, but you need the entire caucus because we need enough people to have enough power to force the transparency to start cutting the contracts to save the money so that we can apply it to the tax savings and cut the state income tax. That's the only way it's going to happen. You can't do anything in the House or Senate by yourself. That's the other thing that kills me. I'm going to do this. No, you're not. If you don't have a bunch of people on your side, it doesn't matter what you think. You're not going to get anything done. So you need to know how to negotiate. You need to know how to get deals done. That's how this thing's going to happen. It's going to take some people to do it.
The spending dilemma that you were talking about there, do you attribute that to a bureaucracy that's just not functioning properly, or is that special interest that's creating that spending?
It is because if we have the money, we're willing to spend it, right? And nobody goes in and looks. I can give you a perfect example. In the city of Alpharetta, we passed a parks bond 3 years ago. I'm a little technical here. It was a $30 million parks bond. Part of that was we allocated like $3.2 million to what we call this Wacky World project. It was a playground, some landscaping, and a bathroom, and a arch and a couple other little things. Well, when the plans came back to city council, mind you, we're all part-time, right? We show up 3 Mondays a month. It came back and we were set to vote on it a following Monday. And I got the bill and I started going through it. And what I found was that we were going to build a bathroom 1,700 square foot bathroom, 10 stalls on each side, 5 sinks. We already had the land, so no land costs, no utility costs, because that's already run. It's literally a 20 stall bathroom. Now, if I ask you, Steve, I don't know if you know anything about construction, what do you think it would cost to build a bathroom that's 1,700 square feet?
Listen,
Any clue?
a couple $100,000.
Yeah, it came in at 1.2 million. The playground was 350,000. The landscape grading was 400,000. And I have a history in construction, and one of the other council members has a big history in construction. And we looked at that and went, there's no way that Alpharetta is going to spend $1.2 million to build a bathroom. That's outrageous. But it was all wrapped up in one bill, and because it was in budget, it was set to get voted on. And this is what happens at the state every single day of session. I promise you. These bills are billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars. And people aren't going in and digging through and going, well, we're paying this consultant $3,000 an hour. We're paying this person $1.2 million to build a bathroom. You've got to go in, get the transparency in the contracts, find out what you're spending that money on, and start cutting those things. We killed that bill that night. Our city council, I love our city council. We killed the bill. We sent it back. We said, we're not doing this. We had a fire station remodel come up. They wanted $5 million. We got it down to 2.9 because we said, no, that's outrageous. It's not as much that people are intentionally doing things. It's just that they don't have the transparency to see where the money's going. And if it's in budget, they spend it. There are professional lobbyists and professional contractors that work with our senators and our House members to push things through that they know they are making ridiculous amounts of money. They're getting egregiously rich off the taxpayers. I jokingly call it the municipal retirement plan. You get a contract with a municipality to build something, 2 or 3 of those and you can retire because nobody's watching. That's the whole point of DOGE, transparency.
Absolutely. Hey, let's talk about District 21. That would be your district. What are the cities and kind of lay out the geographical layout of District 21? Who's in District 21?
Yeah, so this is the way I explain it. It's the very tip of Roswell. Not much, but a little bit. It's Alpharetta, but not Windward, which is our biggest community. It's all of Milton. And then it's Cherokee, but not Woodstock. So it's weird. They cut out Windward and Alpharetta, and they cut out Woodstock and Cherokee. Then it goes up to Ball Ground, Waleska, Freemanville, all the way up through there. So it is definitely a North Fulton and Cherokee County district.
And I would assume since Brandon Beach was your predecessor in that spot, it was pretty much a heavily Republican district.
The district is probably 65% Republican, 35% Democrat. Yes.
Okay, great. Hey, let me ask you this. I'm sure you were paying attention to the General Assembly since you're running for this post. Highlights and lowlights of this past General Assembly. What would you say?
And I try to explain this to people all the time, and I'm gonna veer off topic just a tad. Things that people don't know. There are around 6,000 bills initiated in the last session. 6,000, because anybody can basically submit a bill. Only about 1,800 of those bills made it to vote. And the 1,800 that make it end up having to get approved by the final step, which I believe is the Rules Committee. Once they approve it, it goes up and it gets voted on, right? So only 1,800 of the 6,000 ever saw the light of day. So that's the first thing people need to understand. The second thing I always tell people you need to understand is the Rules Committee is currently controlled by the Republican Party because we have more senators that are Republicans and more House members that are Republicans. Not by a large margin, I got to tell you, it's slim. And as long as the Republican Party stays in control in both houses, we control the Rules Committee, we control what happens in the final votes. So we can literally decide what gets voted on and what doesn't, right? We weed out all the stuff that we don't like. And I always tell people, look, the Senate has a 6-seat margin where it could flip Democratic, right? It's 10 seats, but if 6 of them flip Democrat, suddenly the Senate goes Democrat. In the House, I think it's 11 seats would flip it. So it is extremely important that we protect the Republican Party's ability to stay in power, because if we don't, the Rules Committee will flip, and you will see some bills come through here that will blow your mind. And if you look at the last, I think it was one of the last days of session when the Democratic caucus walked out, right? Most of the people that are inside baseball know this. A bill passed that denied funding for transgender surgery for prisoners. And it passed, the ban on it passed, and the Democratic caucus got up and walked out. And I tell people all the time, you have to understand that we're 6 seats away from that stuff passing in the Senate and 11 in the House. And so one of the issues I think that it's a bit disappointing to me is what I call the single issue voters and the single issue House members and senators, right? And they get on a tear about one issue, and that issue is so strong and powerful to them that they are willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater if their issue doesn't get voted on. Not understanding that just because it didn't happen in this session doesn't mean it won't happen in a future session. But if you take that stance, and I saw somebody on social media say, if we're not going to talk about this, I'm not going to vote. If you don't vote, we stand a chance of losing the power position. And then not only will your ideas never see the time of day, you'll see stuff pass through the House and the Senate that will blow your mind. So you have to understand our first priority has to be to maintain the power, the power base, which is more Republicans than Democrats. Let's maintain that. Let's keep the party together. And then we can have discussions about our single issues. Because if we can't do that, if we fracture the party over one issue, then we lose all ability to get anything done. And as I've traveled through Senate District 21, I see this with people out there that are willing to just throw it all away because of one issue they don't like. And we've got to be very, very careful and build coalitions and understand the big picture. Let's keep the party in power, then discuss our issues. Let's not lose the power, because then our issues have no meaning anyway, because trust me, they'll never see the light of day.
A particular bill that passed that you were happy about, that you thought it was progress?
Oh my gosh. I focused on some of the ones that didn't pass, honestly, like the election integrity thing.
Right.
Didn't get through. I think that'll get through in the next session, and I think it's important that it gets through. It's one of my issues. I think there's a version of it that I agree with that, again, some of the single issue voters disagree with me on.
Women's protecting women's athletics, was that a...
That's huge. That's a huge one. The Riley Gaines issue that had to happen. So that's a big one. I'm glad, that we're working down that path as well. So
let me
get into more specifics.
Let me ask you about the issue that absolutely is a perpetual issue that just will not die. Casino gambling. It comes back every year. And I know that the people who are in the gambling industry are just dying to get into the state. Where are you on that issue?
So I had this question the other night at a forum, and my answer was this. We already have gambling in the state of Georgia. Okay? The lottery is gambling. It's just controlled by the lottery. I own restaurants that have Keno machines. If you ever played Keno, that's gambling. We have slot machines in some of the restaurants that I own where you can play slots and win money. That's gambling. We already have gambling here. What we're fighting over is whether we want to allow a casino to come. But the reality is that gambling in the state of Georgia generated, I think, $1.5 billion last year in revenue to the state. And it paid out $1.4 billion in Hope scholarships. So if you're going to take a hard stance that we're going to eliminate gambling, then you have to take the stance that we're going to eliminate the lottery, which means we're going to eliminate the hope. And if you take that stance, you're going to never get elected to anything ever again for the rest of your life. The argument is not gambling. The argument is what level of gambling that we're going to allow, because we already allow gambling. We need to understand that right out of the gate. Personally, I don't have a problem with gambling. As long as the funds are used correctly, like we're doing it now, to provide more benefits to the people that need it, I don't have a big problem with gambling.
I'm kind of taking you all over the map on this interview. Is there anything that we have left out that you want to tell people in District 21 about your candidacy?
Yes, I'll give you my closing speech when I do candidate forums.
Sure.
How about that?
Sure.
So everybody's familiar with the the Government Accounting Office. It's called the GAO. And if you go to the GAO's website and on their about page, it literally says that our mission is to root out fraud, waste, and abuse and save the government money. That's what it says. And it says we have 4,000 employees, and our budget last year was $881 million. And then it says For every dollar you gave us, the $881 million, we returned $76 in savings, which was $64.5 billion. Okay. So that sounds really good. $64.5 billion in savings is good, right? But then Elon Musk rolled in with DOGE, with a $20 million budget, not $880 million, with less than 100 people, not 4,000 people, and has identified $164 billion in savings, not 64. Now we're getting fought by the Democrats on every single one of them. But he identified 164 billion, which is 2.5 times as much, with 100 people instead of 4,000, with 20 million instead of 880 million. Now, the reason I tell you this is because I'm sure the people at the GAO are nice people. They're probably great people, right? Raising their kids, having parties on the weekends. They're good people, but they're not the right people to get the job done. The right people are the 100 people Elon brought in and started identifying $164 billion in savings. That's the difference between nice people and the right people to get a job done. You don't bring a landscaper in to do surgery on you. That's not the right person. The state of Georgia is a $40 billion company, essentially. It's no different than any other $40 billion company. And your House and Senate are the executives that are running this $40 billion company / state. If you're going to hire somebody to go up there and help manage the $40 billion and the 67,000 employees and all the things that are going on, you need to make sure that you're not hiring somebody or voting for them just because they're a nice guy. You need to bring somebody up there that has the background and the experience, the willpower, and the skills to get the job done. If you don't, then you're going to be just like the GO. You're going to have 4,000 nice people, and it's just not going to work. So make sure whoever you vote for, bring to office is the right person, not just a nice person.
Brian, if people want to follow, keep up with what you're doing, how can they find you?
My Facebook page, Brian Will. My website for this campaign is willforgeorgia.com. But really, my Facebook page, everything's on there. My website is not anywhere near as robust as my Facebook and my Instagram. So Brian Will on Facebook, and you'll see everything I've got there. And you're right, I'm very unabashedly vocal about the way I feel because I think we need transparency in politicians as well. You need to know.
Well, my friend, thank you for the time. We really appreciate you carving out a portion of your day to discuss this with us. And, we love doing these long form interviews. I think we've given the people in District 21 a pretty good understanding of where you are.
Steve, I appreciate you having me today. It was fun.
Thank you. Hey, don't forget, we need you to like this production. We need you to share it. We need you to subscribe. That's what makes the program go faster and faster and higher, and it gets us more people interested in the program and more great interviews just like the one you just saw. We are the only internet podcast that allows you, the viewer, to do a 3-minute short clip on an issue that you're passionate about. Just send us your pitch at editorialinterchange.net, and we will review it. If we like it, you get a 3-minute passionate speech on an issue that you're just crazy about, and it goes on our channel. We'll do it just for you. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next interview.